And welcome back to Chapter 6. This is part 2. So, the Orang Tungsten, or Origin Man, he is believed to be between 6 and 7 million years old. This was around the time of the humanoid ape split, and they used a faunal analysis in order to date this species. It was announced in 2002. And what they were able to find was several jaw pieces, teeth, um, and small but almost complete cranium. It was found in Chad in Africa, possible ancestor of gorillas or humans, but we're not quite sure. The jaw and teeth are very similar to that of Ardilopithecus. Rear of skull is very ape-like, and the foramen magnum placement suggests some form of bipedalism. Remember, when we were talking about bipedalism, we said that the foramen magnum is one of the things we look at, and that is the hole in the base of the skull. So, a little bit more about him. The leg bones indicate that this species was very possibly bipedal as well. The femur is different from that of modern humans, and the brain and body probably similar in size to the modern chimpanzee. It does have primitive dental anatomy. Teeth have a thick enamel and are relatively small, although canines are relatively large and pointed compared to that of humans. It was discovered in 2001 originally and not um, advertised of its being or shown to the world until 2002. So the genus Australopithecus. Um, it spans over 2 million years in the fossil records, which is pretty amazing. Most researchers hypothesize that the human lineage did actually emerge from the Australopithecine. Um, and they tend to be between 1.2 and 1.4 meters tall, fairly high degree of sexual dimorphism, which means that the males tend to be a lot larger than the females, as well as the hair patterns and whatnot tended to be different. They were also glacial, which means that they had a body with a slender build. They had relatively large brains, not quite on the level of a Homo, but still larger than the chimpanzees. And they had gripping hands. They may have started to process food as early as 3.3 million years ago. The arm length suggests that they were partially arboreal, which means that they lived in the trees, although they also had bipedal stature. So it was this cross between being arboreal and being bipedal, which is kind of interesting. Australopithecus cadaba. Um, these come about on the fossil records between 5.8 and 5.2 million years ago. They are typically found in Ethiopia, and in 1997, hand and foot bones, as well as a partial arm bone and a clavicle. Clavicle is, of course, your collarbone, were found, and in 2002, 6 teeth, also believed to be a part of this species, were found. The back teeth of Australopithecus cadava are larger than that of chimpanzees, but the front teeth are narrower. This evidence suggests that the species did most of its chewing in the back of its mouth. So this type of chewing would have focused on hard-to-eat foods, such as fibrous nuts. And this is a photo of the mandible and teeth. So we have Australopithecus ramidus, ground ape and root. They show up on the scene between 4.4 and 4.2 million years ago, and they were found between 1992 and 1994. There are hundreds of fossilized bones for this species. They were also found in Ethiopia. We believe we have about 35 individual members in our fossil records so far that we found. They've also believed that it's possible that they found other fossils of Australopithecus ramidus in Kenya. We know that they are not in our Drac line exactly. The brain body sizes are similar to that of the modern female chimpanzee. There is a great deal of sexual dimorphism. They don't exactly have knuckle walking arms, but they do have brachial, and so the ability to move from tree branch to tree branch, hand structure, as well as the bipedalism features within the legs. Most dental remains, arm bones, indicate a smaller than average Australopithecus, and they have no arches in their feet. Arches are very important as far as our ability to balance on our upright bipedal form. They do have grasping, abducting toes as well, though, which is not something you typically see in Homo species. However, there are some of us in the Homo species that do still have at least partially abducting, grasping toes. The skull indicates the foramen magnum being bipedal in nature. What we think is that they spent a lot of time in the trees and were omnivorous based on the teeth patterning. They tended to be in woodland rather than grassland areas, so that's the kind of plants that they ate, according to some of the carbon isotopic studies that have been done. Australopithecus ammonaeus. This was found by Maeve Leakey in 1995, but first found in 1965. Very interesting to think about how many times we found certain different fossils related to the same species. But anyway, they show up in the fossil records between 4.3 and 3.8 million years ago. They're typically found in either Kenya or in Ethiopia. They have a dentition that is very ape-like. However, their tibia indicates a primarily bipedal locomotion, which is interesting. So we have Kenyanthropus platypus, or the flat-faced human from Kenya. We believe that this is closer to modern humans than Lucy, who's Australopithecus africanus. It is a flat-faced, small-brained bipedal species that shows up on the fossil records about 3.5 million years ago. And they are found as well, of course, in Kenya. And we believe that they were around at the same time as Lucy, Australopithecus africanus. Only known skull was found in 1999 by May Leakey. There's not that much that's known about this species. So that definitely brings us to Australopithecus africanus. And Lucy, who is this very famous skeletal structure that you can see here, was found in Ethiopia. Lucy is a 40% complete skeleton of an adult female. Um, she was found in 1974 and is named after the Beatles, Lucy with the Sky and Diamonds. So she does have a projecting face and an upright stance, and there is a lot of evidence for a decent amount of sexual dimorphism. Fused bones suggest that she is most likely a young adult. She died as she had fractures in her shoulder and arms from either a fall or being trampled. We believe that her face and brain casing, or her skull structure, cranium, are ape-like. She does have curved fingers, which suggests arboreal in nature. Does have some arch to her foot, which is kind of interesting because that shows balance in bipedal locomotion, as well as a foramen magnum that is located in an area suggesting bipedalism as well. So Australopithecus africanus, the Leotoid footprints. These were left in ash, and the really cool thing about them is that you can see that there are different sizes to these footprints. The smaller individual stepped into the footprint of the larger. And it's really cool. It was also found by the Leakeys. And this is just another example. So that brings us to Selma. And this was found in Dinka in 2006. It's a tiny, almost complete skeleton of a child who died either naturally or in an accident and was quickly buried. We know that it was quickly buried because no predators or scavengers have marked the skeleton. It was found by an Ethiopian paleontologist who is photoed right there with the skull. So, a little bit more. Australopithecus africanus shows up between 3.2 and 2 million years ago in the fossil records in South Africa. The Tong child, which is the skeleton that you see on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint, was found in 1925. In the 40s, more fossils of adults were found. Miss Pless, we believe, is 2.5 million year old skull, which is the top right photo. It is debatable on whether or not it's female or male, since we don't know as much about this species as we would like to. However, we know that the females of this species were approximately 43 inches tall on average, and the men were 53 inches tall. Legs and feet both suggest bipedalism, but they do have the curved fingers and toes, which suggests arboreal living. They have less round, but still pelvises that were meant for bipedalism. They do, we know, scavenge meat, as well as they had fruit and leaves in their diet. This is the end of part 2 of chapter 6. See you soon for part 3. Cheers.